So thank you very much to all the panelists, and we really appreciate you taking time out to be with us, to the Deputy Prime Minister, to the Honorable Beth Bechtel, the FAO, thank you, to Christine, to Janet, thank you all for taking the time to being with us today. It was super informative, and I think we're taking a lot from it, all of us, for our countries and our organizations. So truly, truly appreciate it. And we'll share all the information. We're going to go straight on to the next panel. If anybody of the staff wants to take a break, run out, and we'll fill in for you. So up to you, okay? So we're going to go on to panel 4 now. Building resilience through cooperation and partnership. I will again say, for those of you who just came on, that my name is Chava Kari, Director of MASHAV Carmel Training Center, and moderating together with Sarah Wilner, the Deputy Director. We are now, Sarah, can you just take 2 minutes to give the logistics, and we'll begin.
Sure, just 2 minutes. For those who are just joining us, this program, this conference is being streamed live on Facebook, including the Ministry of Foreign Affairs Facebook page of Israel, and it's reaching up to 600,000 followers. Yesterday we had 13,000 viewers at the time, so we're saying hello to all of our Facebook viewers right now. Your microphones are muted, so please make sure that you mute your microphones throughout the panel so that there's no background noise while the panelists are speaking. And the chat is open for anyone at the bottom of the screen if you're interested in discussing, putting up some comments, as well as questions. We will try to get to some questions at the end of the panel, time permitting. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for doing such a great job, and hopefully this panel will have time for more questions. And so to everyone who just came on, and those of you here already, we have the great honor of introducing the Vice President of the Republic of Colombia, Her Excellency Martha Lucia Ramirez de Rincon. Her Excellency has over 35 years of experience in the fields of business development, commerce, international negotiations, foreign investment, security, democracy, governability, and regional development. Vice President Ramirez is predominantly concerned with women's empowerment, the fight against corruption, security, job creation, and strengthening the judiciary. Ms. Ramirez was the Conservative Party's presidential candidate in 2014 presidential elections, obtaining the 3rd largest share of the votes. Since August 2018, she became the first woman to hold the position of Vice President. Congratulations. Ms. Ramirez today leads matters related to transparency, the fight against corruption, gender equality, and supervises the country's infrastructure and transport. Your Excellency, the microphone is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to thank to the Israeli government for inviting us to participate in this very important event. For me, it's also a pleasure to share with these very important members of this panel. Thank you, Chava Kani, for your words, for your kind words. And I also would like to thank Ambassador Jill Haskell, to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ghana, Shirley Akor Bochawi, and the General Director of Health Organization, Susanna Hakab. And of course, I would like to say, to send a hello to Doreen Bogdan Martin. She is also a very good friend of Colombia, the General Director of the Office of Telecommunications in the International Union of Telecommunications. And of course, Mario Pesini. He is also a very, very close friend of Colombia, the director of the OECD, and now he has been appointed as a special advisor of the OECD General Secretary. I would like to say that for me, it's a real pleasure to participate in this online conference on international women leaders. And of course, again, I would like to thank government of Israel, its Agency for International Cooperation, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for organizing this event. COVID-19 has been the worst economic employment, social, and humanitarian crisis since the Great Depression. And according to IMF, its projections as June of 2020, the world GDP will drop by 4.9% by the end of the year, the biggest fall since the Great Depression in 1929. The economic crisis will be even deeper in the case of Latin American countries, the Caribbean and Latin American, where experts of IMF project a drop of GDP by 9.4% this year. The World Trade Organization expects a decline between 13 and 32% in the international trade. And the experts of UNTAC, they predict a decrease by up to 40% in 2020 from the value of 2019. This is a crisis like no other, and it has catastrophic effects on women's economic well-being. Of course, as we all know, women were already at an economic disadvantage before this crisis. In every corner of the world, women have been in a big disadvantage in terms of education, career options, wages, financial inclusion, and access to technology. The burden of unpaid work and family care also contribute to gender inequality. This burden has increased significantly since the start of the crisis, further jeopardizing women's economic empowerment and employment. Women are overrepresented in the sectors highly affected by the crisis. Sectors, specialty healthcare, and informal economy activities such as domestic service, meaning they are bearing the brunt of the economic crisis. According to the OECD figures, women are primarily employed in all these sectors that among the first to be affected by the lockdowns, such as hospitality, approximately 60%, commerce, 63%, restaurant services, 53%. So on average, across Latin American countries, 78% of employed women are located in the sectors most affected by this emergency: commerce, services, transportations, accommodation, restaurants. So in Colombia, women make up 65% of employment in these services sectors and retail. Informality in the labor market is mainly in the hands of women. This is across Latin America and the Caribbean. 1 in 2 women has an informal job in our region. In line with the global average, in Colombia, the percentage is around 59% of informal women. Informal sector don't have social protection, health coverage, or employment contract. This puts them, and mainly these women, at greater risk of falling into poverty. In Latin America and the Caribbean, if nothing is done on this, the result will be 107 million women will fall into poverty and about 82 million in conditions of extreme poverty, according with ECLAC. Additionally, women have less access to and use technology than men. Worldwide, 60% of women in developing countries don't have access to new technologies. In Colombia, for example, 19% of women between 15 and 49 years old have not overcome the digital gap, and this is double in the case of rural women. In the region, female internet use rate went from 11% behind the male rate of 8% in the last year with the available information. Also, a smaller proportion of women than men have STEM skills. This is precisely one of our main focus to promote young women, of course, all the teenagers to move to these STEM careers versus 28% of men in the last years. Since the pandemic is accelerating digital transformation, this will result in more women losing their jobs as they are less prepared for this transformation. The IMF estimates that women will be twice as likely as men to be displaced by technology in the next 2 decades, resulting in around 180 million women in the world losing their jobs. According to estimates of the IDB, 21% of the female labor force in Latin America and the Caribbean are at high risk of losing their jobs if they don't adapt to new technologies. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to act now. We need to push for greater gender equality in Colombia to counter the devastating humanitarian effects of COVID-19. We complemented our cash transfer programs with a new Ingreso Solidario. This is solidarity income. And this program was created in order to meet the needs of households in a situation of poverty or vulnerability. Of the nearly 2.5 million households that have benefited, 57% for women. So additionally, through the program, Youth and Families in Action, 2.5 million women are included. So it means that our government is focused to provide at least 48%, 50%, and some cases 57% of women coverage in all these social and transfer programs. But these programs are a humanitarian response. I would like to share with you 3 of the most significant programs that we are developing in Colombia, not for this crisis, but for the medium and long term. We are very focused in the post-COVID-19. Regarding employment, women and youth and young adults have been the most affected population by unemployment. We are working in coordination with other government agencies to create job opportunities through a mechanism called the Employment Mission, which involves all government sectors that will act to mitigate the effects of this crisis in all the population, of course. But we are focused in some specific programs for women in this employment program. The mission created Women Employment Road, which is supported by the Public Employment Service and has the purpose of identifying and placing job vacancies in sectors prioritized by the mission. On entrepreneurship, we create the Fund for Entrepreneurship Formalization and Business Strengthening as an innovative public policy mechanism to finance ventures and projects that empower and provide economic sustainability, economic autonomy to women. It will operate as a development vehicle to provide training, technical assistance, and of course to provide financial sources to this entrepreneurship of women. And this is in order to ensure success of women as entrepreneurs. We are promoting these initiatives more in order to have a long-term new entrepreneurs and profitable, scalable, replicable, and sustainable new companies in Colombia led by women. Through this fund, we aim to empower 1 million women entrepreneurs. Now, we have selected with the associations of the private sector 400,000 women who are more than ever in the rural areas, different sectors of the rural areas. So we think that this is going to help to reduce these gaps of rural women and of course to provide them a sustainable income for the medium term. Now we are clear that women located in urban areas have priority access to this fund also, and we expect to have a comprehensive support from the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Industry and Trade. So we are working with these two ministries in order to cover rural women with the Agriculture Minister and urban women with the Ministry of Industry and Transportation, and the Ministry of Industry and Trade and Tourism. So 32% of the agricultural production units in Colombia belong to rural women, and 60% of these production units are still informal. So furthermore, only 14% of rural women receive some sort of technical assistance. To improve this situation in the rural areas, women can receive financial funding, all these technical assistance that I mentioned before, and the rural country undertakes that guarantee direct support for rural women and the reactivation of the economy in the country, with agribusiness being one of the most important sectors for our economic recovery. This initiative will allow us to overcome one of the stronger barriers faced by micro entrepreneurs, which is the lack of effective financing and achieve comprehensive assistance that contributes to the sustainability of their business. We also established a mentorship program for women mayors. The mentor, which is one of the most successful business women in Colombia, must help a women mayor in small municipalities to improve her management in productive projects for women in their municipalities. And the objective is to repower the regional economy within the framework of COVID-19, improve growth and economic indicators and job creation. Currently, there are 40 business women mentoring 40 mayor women in, again, small municipalities. And we will have all 130 women mayors of the country being mentored very soon. Finally, I would like to highlight how the lack of effective financing for women is a limitation that affects us through the region, which is why we have proposed 3 concrete actions for the international community. First, the creation of a multilateral fund for entrepreneurship, formalization, and strengthening of business to support women in Latin America and the Caribbean within the framework of the OECD Ministerial Summit of Inclusion and Informality in times of COVID. It was held 3 weeks ago, Mario, I'm clear, I'm not very clear, maybe 3 weeks or a month ago. We have also, second, we have also called on multilateral banks that grant loans to the government so that they establish a clause in favor of gender equality in such way that a certain percentage must be directed to financing women ventures and provide them with technical support so that they become successful entrepreneurs. This clause should be part of a new sustainability policy for multilateral banking in the post-pandemic scenario. And third, it was last April, I convened a group of Latin American women leaders to establish the Action a Coalition for Women Economic Empowerment as part of a wider whole of government effort to increase women participation in the post-pandemic economic recovery. So creating opportunities for women is worth it. Empowering women has a multiplier effect since it helps to promote economic growth. The greater income women and their contribution to the labor market and to business development translates into an increase of the global gross domestic product of about $12 trillion by the year 2026, according to the data given by McKinsey Global Institute. The IMF points out that the active participation of women in the labor market and business will allow for a sustained 35% growth in the gross world product. An analysis by Boston Consulting Group shows that if women and men around the world participated equally as entrepreneurs, global GDP will ultimately rise by approximately 3% to 6%. So I think it's clear for everybody that if we promote women, if we educate women, if we promote the leadership of women in the business sector, in the economy, we are going to recover as a world, and we are going to give a chance, to give an opportunity to our societies to move forward from this crisis, but to move forward in order to have a more inclusive and more equal world. So the evidence is clear for us, and we are very committed in this idea with President Iván Duque and the government of Colombia. We are clear that this is good not only for gender equality, this is going to be good for the entire world. So thank you very much again for the invitation, and I would like to thank very much also to our both ambassadors, Ambassador of Colombia in Israel, Margarita Manjarres. I would like to say hello and to thank you for all your support, and of course, Ambassador Christian Cantor from Israel in Colombia. Ambassador Cantor, thank you for all your commitment in the strength of the bilateral relations between Colombia and Israel. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you, Excellency Vice President of Colombia. As the head of MASHAV, I'd like to thank you on behalf of the Israeli government and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and MASHAV and MCTC for really taking time for joining us in this conference. I think it's a constitute of the very good relations that exist between Israel and Colombia. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Gil. Thank you very much. I'd just like to mention that the Minister of Education from Ecuador has joined us today. Thank you again for coming on and being with us. Our next speaker is Her Excellency Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ghana, the Honorable Shirley Okoor Bachwe, a dear friend to Israel and to MASHAV. The Minister of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration, Shirley Bachwe, was appointed on the 10th of January, 2017. Before entering into frontline politics, the Honorable Minister ran a successful marketing and communications company where she was a consultant for the Ministry of Tourism. In the last administration, a member of Parliament Bachwe served as Deputy Minister at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Information, as well as Trade and Industry. At the party level, between 2009 and 2013, the Honorable Minister served as spokesperson for the Foreign Affairs Ministry. Currently, the Honorable Minister is a member of the Communication as well as the Gender and Children Committees of Parliament, where she works with her colleagues to look into matters relating to communications, as well as examine all gender and children-focused issues to ensure their inclusion in all appropriate legislation. Honorable Minister, the floor is yours. You are on mute. Yeah, good. No, again, you're still on mute. Shirley, you need to unmute. There, good.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you, yes. No, no. No, we don't hear you, Shirley. We heard you just for a minute. Okay, we'll wait a minute to see if Shirley can, if the minister can reconnect. So let's just wait a minute.
Can you hear me?
Okay. Maybe if there's a question to the Vice President, we can take one question.
Sarah, do we have a question for the Vice President in the meantime?
We have a lot of comments for the Honorable Vice President, and thanking her for her wonderful presentation. If I can ask you the same question I asked the Deputy Prime Minister, which would be, what strategies would, or how would local communities and local organizations try and lobby the government so that there are more policies put in place that support women and girls and gender equality?
That the local communities must be part of all this strategy. We are working with local communities through a women association, but also through the association of business leaders and the association of entrepreneurs. We are working in order to promote women in different sectors of the economic activity in Colombia. So that's why we are not only focused in the very low social levels. We are working with all the different levels, but association of women in local communities are so important. We are organizing now the idea to promote some cooperatives of women, mainly in the rural areas, in order to work together with the business associations and these cooperatives in order to permit women to participate in a large scale businesses, but being part of this kind of cooperative. Precisely, I was discussing this idea with Ambassador Cantor from Israel in Colombia, because we believe that the original idea of the Israeli model, it was very good. ¿Cómo se llama las cosas agrícolas? No. Okay, I forgot the name. I forgot the name, but they have one specific name, and I think this idea of cooperatives will be important in order to create the association, in order to include a lot of small producers, maybe like, of course, the kibbutz also, but small producers working together. They can have scale economies, but they also can have more opportunities to participate in the national market and to work together to export their products. And of course, we are also focused in local communities through a program to protect women of gender violence, because unfortunately this lockdown has increased calls for gender violence, the family violence, and this is why we create these houses of empowerment and to protect women when they are having a kind of domestic violence. But these houses for empowerment are also established in order to work together with the business associations in the cities or small municipalities in order to create these linkages between the business sector and also women who are on the base, and they can support them to have a technical education and also to participate in these entrepreneurship different projects in the rural areas or in small cities in Colombia. So communities are, of course, the basis of our job, and that's why we are also very focused in this program with small municipalities who are led by women mayors, because we feel that these local communities, when they are in these opportunities to participate in rural projects through these cooperatives or whatever, they are going to have better scale and they are going to become a good model to follow in other places of Colombia. So this is our commitment with local communities.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We'll pass the microphone back to Honorable Shirley Ikor-Botchway. Shirley,
Hello.
please, Honorable.
Hello, am I there? Can you hear me?
Yes, excellent.
Oh, wonderful. First of all, let me acknowledge fellow panelists and also the head of MASHAV and all the staff of MASHAV, including you yourself, all my good friends there. And in doing so, commend MASHAV as well for organizing this e-conference, which is aimed at assessing the social and economic impact of COVID-19 pandemic on women and children, especially girls. Indeed, since the outbreak of the pandemic, several international virtual fora have been held, many to assess its impact on specific sectors. This conference is therefore a worthy and welcome addition, particularly for most of us participants for whom issues of women and the girl child remain an important consideration in our decision making. I must add that the topic for our consideration, which is building resilience through cooperation and partnerships, is just as relevant as the theme of our conference, since most issues concerning women and girls are deeply rooted in societal norms, values, and belief systems. Therefore, building cooperation and partnerships at all these levels is very critical to address the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on women and girls. On the impact and global reactions, various governments have had unintended negative consequences of the pandemic on many people, especially in developing countries. In most cases, women are the most affected, and some have lost their means of income, particularly self-employed artisanal workers, cross-border, and petty traders. This is inadvertently putting untold stress and hardship on households. It's therefore important for governments to continue to build the resilience of their people, institutions, and systems to withstand challenges such as the COVID-19 pandemic. It's even more critical, we believe, to do so for the underprivileged in our societies, who usually feel the most burden of disasters such as these. Here in Ghana, and I'm talking about our experience in handling the pandemic, issues of women and the girl child remain critical to government and the Ministry of Gender, Children, and Social Protection. The ministry has been partnering with other institutions to provide bi-monthly cash grants for the vulnerable under what we call the Livelihood Empowerment Against Poverty program. They have also distributed hand sanitizers and other products to female head porters and identified vulnerable groups, and have provided hot meals to vulnerable people. Our government is also absorbing the full cost of utilities of low-income consumers during this pandemic. In fact, up to December, to the end of the year. Within our region of ECOWAS, member states, the 15 member states are collaborating in the fight against the pandemic. We're working together. Regional leaders in April held a virtual extraordinary summit on the pandemic and its effects. And it was agreed at that summit that measures must be taken to address the crisis. And the leaders instructed the West Africa Health Organization, WAHO, to continue its efforts of regional coordination, collaboration, and communication, particularly through the strengthening of networks of national public health institutes and laboratories. In addition to training health workers of member states, the West Africa Health Organization is providing critical medical equipment to member states in the form of surgical masks, diagnostic test kits, ventilators and ventilator trolleys and sanitizers. So all the needed medical equipment and PPEs are being provided. At the continental level, which is the African Union, we recognize the importance of cooperation and partnership. And the heads of states have held a virtual session, and government and pledged an amount of 4.5 million. All countries have also pledged towards strengthening the capacity of the Center for Disease Control and Prevention in the fight against the virus within Africa. Member states of the African Union at the meeting also established the African COVID-19 Fund, to which member states initially contributed 12.5 million as seed funding. However, as various countries battle with the effect of the pandemic and try to identify measures of curbing its impact on citizens, the partnerships and collaborations cannot be limited to only the national and regional levels. Ultimately, the aim of the global community is to develop a vaccine against the virus. Individual countries and relevant international organizations have therefore stepped up their research capabilities with a view to coming up with these vaccines. Collaboration at this level is just as critical, we believe, as collaboration at the national and regional levels, if we are to avoid duplication of efforts while ensuring speed and efficiency by our research institutions. Our partnerships and cooperation at these levels must, we believe, focus on the development of vaccines and cure for the virus, accessibility of the vaccines by all, identifying and supporting initiatives undertaken by developing countries to support vulnerable groups, such as women and children, during the pandemic. The accessibility of financial packages and credit facilities for developing countries to help rejuvenate their economies is also very important. And last but not the least, investment in critical sectors, such as science and technology, and support for basic and applied research, which is to strengthen the capacities of national and international institutions to deal with future epidemics. The COVID-19 pandemic has shaken the core of human existence. Many countries have found themselves running after the pandemic instead of having a strategy to face it head on. The interventions outlined above highlight some of the interventions of the government of Ghana, which inure to the benefit of the vulnerable members of society, many of whom are women and girls. For me, therefore, building resilience through partnerships and cooperation during this COVID-19 pandemic must happen at all levels: community level, national, regional, continental, and the global level. At all these levels, it's important for governments to be clear about what they want to achieve and to put in place the right strategies to achieve them, bearing in mind the need to protect the poor and vulnerable. The government of Ghana remains committed to working with the rest of the world to bring this pandemic to an end and to reduce its impact on the vulnerable in society. It is our hope that this conference will bear the fruits of highlighting pertinent solutions to the social and economic challenges encountered by women and girls during these very difficult times. Once again, let me thank MASHAV for organizing this program and for inviting me to be a panelist. I thank my fellow panelists and all of you for your kind attention. And let me say hello to the Ghanaian ambassador in Israel, Ambassador Hananyako. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Ambassador Askel, would you like to?
Yes, thank you, Honorable Minister Shirley Ayorkor. We still remember your meaningful visit to Israel, and we hope to have the opportunity to host you again when the new normal of our life will return to the old normal, where people are traveling from one country to another. It was a very interesting presentation to hear about the perspectives coming from West Africa. This is a very, very international phenomena, but we know that quite a significant burden will go on the backs of women in Africa, and thank you for your participation. Thank you, Chava.
Thank you, Gail. Thank you, Honorable Minister. It's great to see you again. And we understand you're currently lifting the COVID-19 restrictions, and Ghana is on the way to some form of new normal. We wish you much success, and we'd love to hear what's going on in Ghana. And thank you again for joining us, and please stay on for the questions. Thank you very much, Minister. Our next speaker is the Deputy Director General of WHO, Dr. Zuzana Jakab. Dr. Jakab, a native of Hungary, was appointed Deputy Director General of the World Health Organization, WHO, in March 2019, after having served as WHO Regional Director for the European region for 9 years. The Deputy Director General's portfolio includes WHO technical programs for universal health coverage, the life course, communicable and non-communicable diseases, healthier populations, and antimicrobial resistance, along with other programs. Dr. Jakab has held a number of high-profile national and international public health policy positions in the last 3 decades. She served as the founding director of the European Union's Europe Center for Disease Prevention and Control in Stockholm, Sweden. Between 2005 and 2010, she built the European Center into an internationally respected center of excellence in the fight against infectious diseases. Between 2002 and 2005, Dr. Jakab was State Secretary at the Hungarian Ministry of Health, Social and Family Affairs. Between 1991 and 2002, she worked at the WHO Regional Office for Europe in a range of senior management roles. Honorable Deputy Director General, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you for giving me the floor. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. First of all, let me thank the government of Israel, including the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Israel, as well as MASHAV for organizing this event, and also for putting this very important topic on the agenda, which is extremely timely. I would also like to send my greetings to the fellow panelists, and a special greetings to the Vice President of Colombia and the Foreign Minister of Ghana who spoke before me. And let me say how much I enjoyed and appreciated their speeches. And I'm looking forward to the rest of the panel, and I'm sure it will be very rich in content. So having said that, let me say that the pandemic has once again shed light on how gender inequalities continue to disproportionately affect women and girls. But at the same time, we have a unique opportunity to address these inequalities in social and economic mitigation plans. Governments, parliaments, civil society groups, and others need to be engaged in these efforts, and we need a well-developed and cohesive plan. The COVID-19 pandemic and the actions that countries are taking to respond to it are having a profound impact on the lives of girls. Firstly, in many places, schools have closed, hindering their abilities to continue their education and benefit from school-based services. Movement restrictions have been put in place, preventing them from seeing their friends and partners, participating in their usual activities, and accessing the health supplies and services they need. Their parents and caregivers may have had to stop working or are working from home, leading to financial constraints and changing family dynamics. Secondly, from previous experience in crisis settings, be they due to natural disasters, civil war, or epidemics like Ebola, girls are vulnerable to being married off as children and to sexual abuse, leading to increases in unintended pregnancies and unsafe abortions and sexually transmitted infections. We know that women are disproportionately affected by the pandemic. They are often working from home while at the same time supervising children's online education and taking care of family members day and night under stressful conditions of lockdown and restricted movement. And they are often caring for the sick, either at home or in long-term care facilities, where the majority of workers are usually women. This burden of care needs to be shared by other members of the family, including men, and through the provision of formal support for the carers. Women are also in the front lines of providing healthcare in response to COVID. Specific attention to the needs of female healthcare workers must include personal protective equipment of the right size and tailored for women, adequate breaks, and support for frontline workers. Essential health services to be continued during the pandemic need to include sexual and reproductive health services, including uninterrupted access to contraception, abortion to the full extent of the law in that country, and maternal health care. Older women and women with disabilities may have additional needs, including maintaining essential health services for conditions such as diabetes, heart disease, and mental health. The pandemic has disproportionately affected older people, leaving many older women who live alone, isolated from families and friends. It has made daily activities more challenging and sometimes impossible. During the pandemic, many countries have reported more calls to helplines and increased reporting of domestic violence and intimate partner violence. Economic insecurity and loss of livelihoods, disruption of social support networks, and prolonged exposure to abusers, as has been the case during the lockdown, are all risk factors known to be associated with domestic violence for women. Governments must include response to violence against women in their COVID preparedness plans and budgets, and ensure that services are sufficiently resourced and can be maintained. The economic effects of COVID-19 on women and girls are also significant. Women in the workforce tend to be in informal, temporary, and insecure jobs, that are likely to be most affected as a result of the rising economic insecurity related to COVID. Governments must ensure that financial and social protection measures are specifically targeted to women workers, including those in the informal economy. The loss of jobs, health, and other social benefits are likely to disproportionately affect women. During times of economic scarcity, women may be less likely to access health benefits and health care due to limited household resources. They are also likely to be affected by food insecurity and hence at the risk of increased risk of nutrition-related conditions. And for older women, accelerate declines in physical and cognitive capacities. Economic insecurity contributes to stress and related mental health conditions. It is important that mental health services and psychosocial support are specifically targeted and accessible by women. Next, we need reliable data on which we can base our actions. Although more countries are collecting and reporting sex disaggregated data for infection rates and case fatality rates overall, less than half of the case reports forms sent to WHO are disaggregated by sex, and less than a third are disaggregated by age. This makes it challenging to have an accurate picture of how COVID-19 is affecting men and women differently across all ages in terms of exposure, progression to severity, and death. Beyond infection and mortality, age and sex disaggregated data for comorbidities, hospitalizations, recoveries, access to testing, and so forth are not systematically available or reported. It is urgent that countries report sex disaggregated data It is urgent that countries start to collect sex disaggregated data, and less than half or third are disaggregated data by age. I'm sorry, my computer is making a trick. Let me move to my online text. Apologies. This makes it challenging to have an accurate picture of how COVID-19 is affecting men and women differently across all ages in terms of exposure, progression, severity, and death. So all vaccine and therapeutic trials that are taking place now need to plan proactively to enroll adequate number of women also, including pregnant women and older women, as there is evidence that immunological responses to COVID may be different between women and men. And as these trials are going on now, this is a very important and urgent issue. Finally, we need investments in several areas. Investment and action are required to support girls, especially those who are most vulnerable, with continuing with their education when schools are closed, and to ensure that they rejoin when schools reopen. Girls and young women also need targeted information and education using a variety of approaches and access to health and social services, including services for violence and abuse. Data and not assumptions must drive the design and execution of these efforts, and girls must be involved in them not just as recipients, but as active players. It is heartening to see that this is beginning to happen with frontline organizations, meaningfully involving them in speaking out and in helping shape actions to respond to these realities. Investments must explicitly target the needs of women workers, including those in health workforce and the informal community. These women need financial and social protection for childcare, support for caring for the sick, health insurance benefits, equal pay, and plans to help those who are first to lose their jobs or find it difficult to regain employment. Investments are also needed to ensure that health services for women are continued and made accessible for women who are likely to have less mobility to access them, including for women who are care dependent and live at home or in long-term facilities. Investments are needed to ensure that economic recovery plans prioritize access to education for girls and social services that reach women and girls, including the most marginalized. This includes investments in childcare, support for those caring for the sick and for those who are care dependent, and public education efforts that emphasize the shared responsibility of women and men. Most importantly, the process of economic and social recovery planning and implementation must include the participation of women. Those in the most marginalized groups are needed in leadership, decision-making, and accountability roles. This will ensure that the voices of women are heard and their needs are addressed. Thank you for your attention and apologies for the technological glitch. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you very much. Yes, Gail?
Thank you. I think it's especially commendable to gain the valuable time of Deputy Director General of WHO in these very, very challenging days, and it was a very interesting insight from within. Thank you. Thank you so much, Susanna.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Just to add a word, we know that WHO is rolling updates on corona disease for people and countries to keep abreast of what's going on in the world. So we'd like to thank you and your organization for the excellent work that you are doing. We'd like you to, if you can, stay with us for the question and answer period. We'd much appreciate it.
Thank you very much. We'll do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Honorable Doreen Bogdan Martin, who comes to us today from Geneva, I believe. Ms. Bogdan Martin was elected director of the ITU Telecommunication Development Bureau on the 1st of November, 2018. She is the first woman in a 153-year history of ITU to hold an elected office. She took office on the 1st of January 2019. Prior to her election, Ms. Bogdan Martin oversaw the organization's membership, corporate communications, external affairs, and UN liaison teams, and was instrumental in establishing the Broadband Commission for Sustainable Development, on which she continues to serve as executive director. Prior to joining ITU, Ms. Bogdan Martin was a telecommunications policy specialist in the National Communication and Information Administration, U.S. Department of Commerce. She is an affiliate of the Harvard University Berkman Klein Center for Internet and Society and a Generation Unlimited champion. She is also an amateur radio operator. Honorable Director, please, the microphone is yours.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction, and good afternoon from Geneva. where we are about to have a big thunderstorm. So apologies if there are any background noises. Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it's really a great pleasure to be here. I want to thank in particular Ambassador Gil Haskell, Hava, you, Sarah, for inviting me to join this distinguished panel. I would like to begin my intervention with a look at the digital divide and also its impact during this COVID-19 crisis. As the UN Agency for Digital Technologies, ITU's work is all about bringing the transformational power of digital innovation to people everywhere. Our focus on inclusive connectivity naturally means that we also focus on increasingly on technology and gender issues, because we're all very much aware, as we've heard from the previous panelists, that the power and the transformational potential of connectivity is not, I repeat, is not equally distributed. In fact, ITU statistics confirm that women trail men in internet access in every part of the world except Latin America. Of the estimated 3.6 billion people that are still unconnected, the majority are women and girls. And on average, 52% of women remain totally offline compared with 42% of men. And we know that even this dispiriting figure does not paint a true picture, because in the world's poorest nations, women's access to technology is much more limited. A recent report by our Equals Access Coalition indicates that in the world's least developed countries, women are 33% less likely to have internet access than their male counterparts. And even more worrying, research shows that the digital gender gap is actually widening in the very parts of the world that could benefit most from better connectivity. This unequal access to ICTs, it's not new. But what I would say is that the connectivity chasm that has taken a much greater amplitude or scale in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, as women once again are bearing the brunt of the social and economic consequences of this crisis. We heard yesterday in the beginning of this conference from the UN Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed that the pandemic is dramatically exacerbating existing gender inequalities. And in parts of the world where women are already disadvantaged in so many ways, the further prejudicial impact of the global gender digital divide means that girls and women are disproportionately excluded from tech-enabled measures that were designed to mitigate the health, social, and economic repercussions. And of course, despite women making up the vast majority of frontline healthcare workers and home carers, as was just noted by the WHO Deputy Director General. I think that many of us will have seen the recent article by Melinda Gates warning that ignoring the effects of COVID-19 on women could ultimately cost the world as much as $5 trillion. Of course, the digital gender problem, it's not just a problem about access. Around the world, women are chronically underrepresented in the tech sector at the very time when digital technologies are dramatically reshaping the societies and the economies that we live in and the values that we live by. And even as research clearly indicates, the majority of future jobs are going to be requiring at least basic digital skills. And women are much more likely to lack those skills than men. Also in yesterday's opening session, the UNICEF Executive Director, Henrietta Fore, reminded us that the learning challenges that girls and young women already experience are worsening in the wake of this pandemic. And I would say I fully share her view that we need to work much harder and much faster to ensure equal opportunities for girls in digital skills acquisition if we're going to be able to fully leverage the potential of ICTs as the foundation of a better future for all. Right now, multiple barriers are holding back girls and women in the digital space, from poverty and lack of affordable access to devices, from lack of exposure to ICTs and the needed training in digital literacy, The lack of relevant content is also an issue, as well as the lack of content in local languages. Concerns around online safety is also a big issue, and of course, entrenched gender stereotypes and cultural norms. And also the lack of female role models, visible female role models. And what's great about your conference is there's so many great role models out there. The stakes in ensuring gender equitable digital inclusion have never been higher. And with chronic digital deprivation exerting a strong negative influence on girls and women's future prospects, as well as on national, regional, and global socioeconomic progress. We know that digital technologies can be a key driver of development, and we know how empowering meaningful access to ICTs can be for women and girls. Putting in place workable, sustainable solutions to redress the digital gender gap needs to be a collective action. And it's actually about the title of this panel. It's about building resilience through cooperation and partnerships. And Her Excellency, the Minister of Foreign Affairs from Ghana noted this. It's got to be at all levels. We need collective action that unites governments, unites network operators, unites digital equipment and software developers, educational institutions, technology platforms. We need them all together in the pursuit of one goal. And that goal is to make access to technology a basic right for all. We at the ITU recognize the fundamental importance of partnership, of cooperation, and of collaboration in achieving this goal. And ITU is a bit unique amongst UN agencies in that throughout our 155-year history, we've welcomed members not just from governments, but also from the private sector, from research institutions, from industry bodies, and even from NGOs. And it's our consensus-focused culture that we've always been about. We work through consensus to develop technical standards. We work through consensus to share spectrum resources. And of course, we work through multi-stakeholder collaboration to advance connectivity and capacity building partnerships aimed at getting everyone online. One great example in the digital gender space is the Equals Global Partnership for Gender Equality in the Digital Age. We founded this back in 2016, along with 3 key partners, UN Women, the UN University, and GSMA. And Equals represents a successful example of cooperation with more than 100 committed partners across 115 countries, built around 3 coalitions: access, skills, and leadership. And we work to advance this throughout the tech sector. And this successful multi-stakeholder partnership has resulted in training of more than 50,000 women that have received training in digital skills, in mentoring, and 146 research projects that have been undertaken in countries around the world to help us to better understand the gender digital divide and also to identify potential effective remedies that are appropriate in local environments. One flagship activity that falls under the Equals banner is our annual Girls in ICT Day. That's a global event. It's now celebrated in over 170 countries, including Israel, Colombia, and Ghana. And it's celebrated on the 4th Thursday in April. We've also launched, and this will be the 6th year, our Equals in Tech Awards, which is an international competition that tries to put the spotlight on those that are really making progress to bridge the digital gender gap, focusing on skills, leadership, and research. And we'll be announcing this year's winners towards the end of this year. I hope some of you joining today will be at that celebration. We're also focused on building professional tech skills. So we're running a number of Girls Can Code efforts. We have African Girls Can Code, America's Girls Can Code. And these are really hands-on workshops for young women to help them, to expose them to a career in the tech sector. And we will be rolling out this program in other regions in the coming months. And I'd also like to highlight our exciting new partnership with UNICEF, the GIGA effort. I believe Henrietta Fore mentioned that yesterday because it's an ambitious project to connect every school in the world to the power of the internet. So to connect every school, and it has tremendous potential for young girls and also for women in local communities. GIGA really aims to connect every child to information, opportunity, and choice. For girls, particularly in remote and rural communities, the acquisition of digital skills and the ability to access a whole world of educational resources online can be truly life-changing. And in the light of the COVID pandemic, we have actually broadened our GIGA vision to ensure that these connected schools can actually serve as community hubs for internet access and training. Just imagine what it might mean to millions of housebound women who currently lack access to a connected device. To complement all of these activities, we're also taking an active role in the generation equality process that's been facilitated by UN Women. And we will be leading together with UNICEF, the Tech and Innovation Coalition. And our goal through this effort on tech and innovation is really to develop an impact-oriented blueprint aimed at accelerating progress to bridge the digital gender gap through more active engagement and participation of women and girls. I know that time is short, so let me close by reiterating why these activities matter so much and why we can only build resilience through cooperation and partnership. It matters because digital technologies are profoundly reshaping the world that we live in and the world our children will inherit. As our digital ecosystems grow and become increasingly complex, the foundational choices that we make today will be with us for many generations to come. Digital technologies give us a real chance to change the world. We need to strive every day, to ensure that the old entrenched inequalities of our analog world are not replicated in the digital age. Let us instead do all that we can in our power to ensure that our global digital transformation is a truly democratic transformation that creates connected societies and economies that truly benefit all. And as Her Excellency, the Vice President of Colombia said so eloquently in the beginning, we need to act now. The evidence is clear and it's worth it, not only for gender equality, but for the entire world. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Your talk was captivating and sharing of new programs was amazing for all of us to hear about. I'm sure you'll get a lot of phone calls very soon. In yesterday and today's deliberations, the topic of digital technology was brought up over and over again in all the panels. Many thanks for being with us today, and I'm sure there'll be questions for you and continue in the last session. I will go on to our next speaker.
Let me just add my vote of thanks to Doreen. I think, Doreen, we met in Israel in one of the last international exhibition and conferences before our world turned upside down. So I hope to meet you again. Thank you so much for participating.
Okay, thank you, Gil. Thank you, Doreen. Our next speaker is the director of the OECD Development Center, our good friend, Director Mario Pezzini, who comes to us today from Paris, France. Director Pezzini is the director of OECD Development Center and the special advisor to OECD Secretary General on Development. Before joining the Development Center in 2010, Director Pezzini held several senior management positions in the OECD, where he has been working since 1995. Prior to joining the OECD, Director Pezzini was a professor in industrial economics at the École Nationale Supérieure des Mines de Paris, as well as in the US and Italian universities. Director Pezzini served as an advisor in the field of economic development, industrial organization, and regional economics in international organizations and think tanks, ILO, UNIDO, European Commission, to name a few. Honorable Director, please, the microphone is yours.
Thank you very much. A pleasure to be all together. Shalom lekulam, but in particular to my friend Gil Askel, Ava Kari, and Sarah. And let me also say shalom to my sister and brother from Africa, in particular, obviously, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ghana. Ghana is not only member of the center, but member of the Bureau of the center. To todas mis hermanas de Latinoamérica, en particular la vicepresidenta de Colombia, Marta Lucía Ramírez, y también a Ángela Ospina, que es la directora de la Agencia de Cooperación. A real pleasure to be all together as well with the Asia friend. Now, I would like to, everything has already been said, and what was not said doesn't deserve to be said. So let me concentrate only on a few points, maybe 12, the discussion that will follow. I will make 4 of those points, and I am very happy to be with my colleague from other multilateral organizations around the table. Now, my first point has to deal with statistics. Next slide, please. In fact, let's recall one crucial point. Measure what you care, and not necessarily care what you measure. And when we discuss these matters, very often we are confronted with very important, helpful indicator of performance. I mean, gender wage gap, reduced labor participation, percentage of women in parliament, everything is crucial. However, there are other crucial dimensions that are related with the root causes of the present condition of inequalities. And they have to deal with rules, institutions, formal and informal, girl-child marriage in certain countries, female genital mutilation, violence against women, and many other aspects. These are the hidden part of the iceberg, but they have a major influence on the performances that we see in societies and in labor market. That's why we have to measure those phenomena. And I am very happy that the Development Center is a pioneer to look at laws and social norm. We have a reference institution for analysis of social norm and legal frameworks. In particular, our SIGI, Social Institution Gender Index, is the official source for monitoring the SDG 5.1.1. Now, we consider in particular 4 key dimensions: the family, discrimination in the family, I mean, restricted physical integrity, restricted access to productive and financial resources for women, and restricted civil liberties. Now, what I want to state here is that in order to organize policy responses, we have to take into account this element. And I have to lament that almost systematically, policy responses are ignoring the gender lenses, which might lead to an aggravation of the discrimination in social institutions measured by the SIGI. As a consequence, I will insist on the importance of this conference in recalling to us that we have to address this specific measure, entering also in granularity, as many have said, when it comes to local reality. My second point, other slide, please. That's already been said several times by several speakers. No? There are particular dimensions in which it's evident that the consequences of the COVID has been particularly strong on women. By the way, having touched by the virus and also through hospitals, I was capable to see myself directly what was the contribution. Women are on the front line for between healthcare workers, and they have in many occasions answered the problem much more than the organization of the health system. Both they are active at home, caring for the sick, and in the healthcare facility, accounting for nearly 90% of the global nurses workforce. Second, economic vulnerability, we have said. The women are overspread in sectors that have been particularly affected by the COVID. I am thinking to retail, food, and obviously these are sectors that have been like accommodation or household work, affected by the measure also related to it, particularly in developing countries. the vice president of Colombia was mentioning the percentage of informality. And when you have informality in society, every moment of the work on a day is dominated by activities where women are engaged. And if you block the economy, obviously you are blocking their contribution. Third, unpaid care and domestic work. The burden of unpaid care and domestic work has increased because of confinement of children, because of confinement of husbands, because of irritation and stupidity of husbands, and so on. As a consequence, we see domestic violence increasing in these days. And the likelihood of domestic violence episode is very high. And finally, sexual and reproductive health, because resources have been diverted towards the fight against the pandemic, which make a lot of sense, but these are the expenses of regular health services, such as maternal health services, and have limited the chances of women of attending maternal health services and increased the likelihood for women giving birth unattended. So here, in short, I think we have to pay attention to what these vulnerabilities now related with COVID will sediment in terms of rules and norms in the everyday anthropology and life of people. That's the big question for me for the future. Next slide. Now, there are two last points that I would like to make with this slide. The first is, todo cambia. We live in a world in which a lot of things have changed at the international level, at the national level. And when it comes to international level, we are living in a way in which the traditional actors of cooperation have changed. In the past, were the donors countries, and on the other side, there were the recipient countries. Now we have a lot of new actors dominating the scene, starting with the emerging country, Israel, Turkey, Chile, Colombia, Mexico. They are member of the OECD, they are not member of the DAC, they are very active cooperator. So the world has changed in this dimension. It is a change in terms of objective. In the past, it was just fighting extreme poverty. Now we have the SDGs, is a wider perspective. The modality have changed. So we need to rethink international cooperation. First of all, the indicator. We continue to use the GDP as if it were a must. I remember a professor of mine in MIT used to say, you know, using GDP is like going to see a doctor and he asks you only about your weight. Is it enough to judge about your health? Personally, in particular, I wouldn't like to be judged only on that indicator. Now, therefore, we need to rethink the indicator and we need to put in the indicator different dimensions, national, local, international, and also we need to take into account these social norms, these social formal and informal institutions. If we want to address the well-being of people and not just a representation that we invented 70 years ago about what means being happy, and obviously it is outdated. We need new actors, I was saying. In addressing the issue that we are seeing in terms of policy, we need to monitor what Colombia is doing, what Kenya is doing, what Ghana is doing, what Thailand is doing, what many other countries are doing. And we have seen a list of a lot of policy. We need to track those policies and figure out what works and what doesn't. How can you do it? You need a table, and you need the country around the table, and you need to discuss to verify if what is said corresponds to reality or is just pure rhetoric. That now the streets are criticizing the yellow jacket in France or in Chile or in many other countries around the world, Thailand and so on. They are saying exactly this point. Stop with your rhetoric of an elite that is outdated and understand what the people are saying. So if you want to understand each other, we need to create a table where the actors can discuss and verify if the policy announced are corresponding to reality, if our learned rhetoric at school correspond with facts. Now, if we want to create this table, let me start by saying that at present, our tables are asymmetrical. The virus is symmetrical, it goes everywhere, it enters everywhere, it comes back everywhere, but the impact is asymmetrical. And unfortunately, we continue many of our discussion done only with a few countries at the table. I remember, probably we have not taken into account that decolonization took place, that the wall of Berlin fell down, that there are emerging countries that in the past were not at the table, but now they should be. And therefore we need to have a clear discussion. OECD was created because Europe was destroyed and the country had to decide where to put the Marshall Fund. And they created a committee to decide together what were the best practices with the principle of unanimity. Now, that's exactly something similar that we need today. Maybe not all countries at the same time around the table, if not, will be advocacy, but we need discussion. Can we find in the multilateral system experiences of this nature? Of course, and I want to support the Health World Organization. It's absolutely ununderstandable how in a moment in which a virus attacks everybody, we are criticizing the action of a multilateral table. Does it make any sense, this type of attitude? Obviously it doesn't. So we need to put together World Bank, United Nations Women, ECLAC, UNESCAP, Africa Union, the actors that represent a crucial protagonist today in dealing with the COVID, and in particular, the condition of women in the COVID, to discuss and see how measures work. We have done it. Now, recently, we have launched, with the support of the European Union, a specific facility in Latin America, and we have measured in Latin America the SIGI in detail. Colombia, I am not saying this because the vice president is here, but to be the first in the ranking of those countries. And sometimes you have some surprises, even when you include OECD countries, and many of our prejudices should be revised. So my third point is we need a new multilateralism with real table of discussion and voices. And I want to stress one point here. I am persuaded that the work that Israel is doing, that the Center for Women is doing, is very important, with very specific capacity and skills, inherited also by the history of Israel. And as such, these are actors that we need at the table when we discuss. And thank you for organizing this event, because it demonstrates the point I am trying to make. Finally, this is horizontal international cooperation, but then we need vertical national cooperation. When it comes to intervening in this field, national government in many cases lack capacities. First of all, capacity means financial and fiscal revenue. More or less, OECD countries have 34.3% of revenue out of GDP. Latin America is at 22.8, 22.9. Africa is 17. Important countries like Indonesia are at 12. So in general, the countries don't have the finances to intervene. Obviously, we need in the midterm to think about fiscal reform that increases the level of taxes that, among other things, will reduce inequalities, among other things. But at present, we have to deal with issues like the debt. And we have to support countries that are discussing the debt, because there is no alternative. The alternative is, do I pay the interest on the debt of the past? That, which is in Africa very limited. We are talking about 50% of the budget, not like in the United States or in Japan. So we are speaking of levels that are limited in nature. We need to support the country for that. If not, the money will not be spent where they are needed: health, employment, and long-term recovery, or infrastructure for telecommunication and so on. We need help to help countries in institutions that are capable to implement those measures and policy and verify what does work and what doesn't work. And to do that, multilateral organizations can do a lot, because they can accompany in updating the present framework of data, in improving the framework of data, and in using and measuring what matters. In fact, I will conclude by saying, I am making 4 points, therefore. I think that institutions, formal and informal, are crucial, that we are doing for COVID will impact those institutions positively or negatively. I think we need a new multilateral series of tables to discuss with much more inclusive than in the past. And fourth, we need specific targeted support to countries. So as you have seen, I am mentioning financial issues, but that's not the core. The core is sharing knowledge and experience across country. Therefore, I like very much the initiative that MASHAV has taken. And I think we need more of those initiatives structured and repeated over time to verify if what we have said has been done and well. Thank you.
Gil?
Mario, thank you so much. First of all, it's great to hear your Italian accent after a long time that we haven't met, and thank you for your enlightening ideas of restructuring. I think one of the main repercussions of COVID-19 will be a restructuring of many former ideas of international development cooperation, multilateral cooperation, trilateral cooperation, bilateral partnerships, and of course MASHAV will keep on seeking for partnerships through the Development Center at OECD. And I think you're doing a great job, a tremendous job. One of the greatest challenges for all of us is how to maintain structures of cooperation under this international lockdown. That's something that maybe we should dedicate another conference to, but really we appreciate your words and the work of the Development Center and for your friendship. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'd like to add to what Gil said. First of all, we wish you good health, and thank you for worrying about my health. When I spoke to Mario, what was it, yesterday, the day before, I was coughing, and he had told me that he had corona and was now recuperating. And I had just eaten some peanuts, so I had one stuck in my throat, and he was sure I was a goner. But thank you, appreciate your looking after me. And we do wish you all the best of health. So we're delighted that you agreed to speak to us and present the fascinating data gathered by the OECD, which we all use all the time. You brought up dilemmas and the important things we still need to do. And the points you brought up are so important. And I think this dialogue, as you said, needs to continue. I would like to ask Sarah if there are one or two questions that you'd like to present.
Yes, hi everyone, thank you. There's been a very diverse discussion going on in the chat. The first question I'd like to ask the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, if she is available. Not sure.
Sarah, we have the, from Israel, the representative who wanted to respond before.
Right, thank you. So the first thing I'd like to do is actually introduce the head of international affairs at the Ministry of Communications of Israel, Naama Hennig, who is going to be a respondent on behalf of the State of Israel. Naama, please, if you'd like to say a few words. Thank you.
Naama?
Thank you, Chava. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I'm grateful for the opportunity to participate in this forum. And I would like to thank all of the speakers. We are honored to share ideas. We eagerly pursue the purpose of billions.
יש איזה משהו ישוב קלע?
Through cooperation.
Naama, we can't hear you properly.
Oh, unmute. The question is, let me see, let me check on the volume. Okay. Is it better now? Can you hear me better now?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Gender divide now? Okay. It is a major challenge. Every affects many lives. Slopes and connectivity increases. So is the gender.
No, Nama, we can't hear properly. You have a connection problem.
Okay. So I don't see how I can solve it myself. I don't have the support here.
Nama,
is it better now?
It's better to switch off your video. We can hear you.
Okay, I will do that. Okay, that's a good idea. Okay. Is it, can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, it's better, perfect. The gender divide is a major challenge which for years exists in every sphere and affects many lives. As technology develops and connectivity increases, so is
Nama, we can't hear you. You're cut off all the time, Nama. We don't hear you.
So, נצטרך לוותר, אני מניחה, ולשלוח את דברי הסיכום והתודה וההערות שלנו.
Okay, so we will ask Nama and the minister to please send us his words, and we will send them to all the participants. Thank you very much, Nama.
Okay.
Sarah.
Okay, thank you. So I will go straight into the questions. Okay, we do have a question here for WHO, for Dr. Jacob. The question is, has the World Health Organization issued specific standards for public area infrastructure after the COVID-19 pandemic? For example, for local market public infrastructure. Dr. Jacob?
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, okay, great. So thank you for the question. First of all, let me say that we learned a lot from this COVID experience, all of us. And I fully agree with many of the previous speakers who said, and particularly the representative of the OECD, that we have to learn from this COVID experience when we are building back. And he particularly addressed the root causes in the recovery, which we find extremely useful. And you remember that some weeks ago, our Director General announced an external evaluation of the WHO-led global response to the COVID outbreak. And this investigation is started and going on. But while we are doing that, we need a lot of solidarity and unity among all the international players. And I cannot emphasize that enough, strong enough. The other issue I wanted to raise is, in response to your question, is that during this COVID, we have learned a lot about the weaknesses of the health systems. And one of the things that we need to take forward in the coming weeks and months is learning from this experience to come to an agreement on how we can strengthen our health systems in the countries and making them more resilient. And there are several issues here. Some of them relate to the infrastructure, as you raised, because in many of the countries where WASH is missing, water, energy, even communication facilities are missing, there we have to build this up. This has to be one of the first priorities. But it's not enough to focus only on infrastructure. It is enough to strengthen the preparedness plans in the countries. Preparedness and universal health coverage are the two sides of the same coins. If we don't have strong preparedness plans, again and again, we will end up in the same situation as now. We also have to strengthen the essential public health services, make sure that we have appropriate surveillance system, appropriate data collection, including disaggregated data in the countries, proper data collection and health information systems. We have started to build this up in the last couple of years, but we are not far enough in this. We have to make sure that we also build up capacity to detect the health threats. Even in the most developed countries, we have noticed that we forgot to do contact tracing, for example, which we used to consider as something belonging to the past. And now that this COVID came back, even in the most developed countries, we realized that we do not know how to detect health threats, how to quarantine patients. So the infrastructural development and the investments into the human workforce, into the health workforce, and also the population have to go hand in hand. It's not enough to focus only on infrastructure, but this is a very important element, particularly in those countries where it is missing. And it is also quite important that we need to strengthen primary healthcare systems and integrating all these essential public health functions and disease-specific work into the primary healthcare systems. And one very significant element in this is also the workforce development. We have a world now when 18 million health professionals are missing from the workforce. Unless we very urgently fill these gaps, it will be difficult to move forward and to make progress towards universal health coverage. So my message is that infrastructural developments, yes, both in primary healthcare, in essential public health services, and also in hospitals, but the human capacity at the same time. And as the women are leading the workforce in the health system, they are the majority of the workforce. This also means investment into women. And my final point is that we are particularly anxious these days with the fact that many of the essential services and public health programs in the countries have been disrupted due to COVID. Firstly, because staff has been repurposed. Secondly, because supply chains have been broken, and that has to be rebuilt. We started that as a global initiative. And thirdly, there was also fear from taking the children to the health facilities. Parents were afraid that they would be infected by COVID, and therefore they did not get the normal immunization coverage. So these disrupted health care programs, public health programs, have to continue, and this needs to be our joint efforts to build them up. This includes maternal services, SRHR services, immunization program, chronic diseases, and other infectious diseases, because if you don't do that, we will lose the excellent gains that we have achieved during the last decades in terms of health claims globally. So these are my key messages. Sorry for the long reply to your short question. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Jacob. I have another question here for Ms. Doreen at ITU. The question is, there's so much online-based violence against women and girls, and how can digital security be ensured for them with regards to online-based violence?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sarah. If you would allow me, because I saw I've been following the chat. It's great that there's so many comments on the chat.
Sure.
I could try to answer that, but maybe to answer the other ones that were directed to me at the same time, because I think
Sure, of course, yeah.
If I may. So I saw the point about whether we had an opportunity to reduce the digital gender gap by focusing on the digital native generation. I would say absolutely yes. And then there was the point about collective action and, you know, how to make the collective action actually work. And I would say that what COVID-19 has done is really put the spotlight on connectivity. And as Hava was mentioning before, you've heard about connectivity throughout all of your sessions. And it's because I think for the first time ever, connectivity has been understood as what the UN Secretary General said in his words, almost a matter of life and death. We've actually seen that without connectivity, inequalities have been tremendously exacerbated as a result of this crisis. So the spotlight's there, and that also means that the political will is there in a way it's never been before. And so what we need to do is leverage that in the form of collective action and actually try to move the needle in bridging the digital divide, and even more specifically, bridging the digital gender gap that needs urgent attention. Now, when it comes to violence online, online bullying, harassment, all of these things have also accelerated during this COVID pandemic, and we do need to do more. We launched a few weeks ago the Child Online Protection Guidelines, and I would encourage everyone to go to the ITU website and check out our new guidelines, which are guidelines for children, for educators, for parents. They provide very useful tips. I think the whole notion of digital skills and training also helps, so that with young people, first time online, that they understand it's not just about the tool, it's about the knowledge that surrounds the use of that tool that will help to keep them safe online. There was another point also about gadgets, and I think gadgets is also linked to affordability, that we really need to do more to bring down the cost of services and also the cost of devices. And maybe one last thing on the digital natives, if I may. If we look at Africa, for example, 77% of the population is below the age of 35. And the average age, I think, is 19 and growing, you know, rapidly, that population of young people. And this is tremendous potential. It's tremendous potential to transform a whole region. But of course, if neglected, it could exacerbate poverty, it could exacerbate inequalities and threaten peace, security, prosperity. And what we need to do is focus on what those young people need in order to change their potentials and their opportunities. And digital skills and connectivity can help do that. Of course, keeping in mind the safety issues that were mentioned before. Thank you.
Thanks so much. It's great that you were able to summarize all the questions. I didn't know which one to choose, so I'm glad that you were able to comment on all of them. Thank you so much. So the last question would be for Mario Pizzini. There are also a few questions in chat. I'll choose one. What are the avenues where small enterprises can reach out for support? And can you give some advice on that? You're on mute.
The situation of small firms being small means that they don't have that much space fiscally to face the constraints. So they depend a lot on the immediate policy of economic supports of government that are a consequence of the measure of containment. As for in the immediate terms, here we have a big problem, because if we think what will happen after the crisis will begin, and if we learn from the failure that we had with the crisis of 2008, because for 10 years we were incapable to recover from that crisis. The situation before the COVID in economic terms was a depressing one in reality. Therefore, we need to maintain and support the activity of the small firms in the immediate terms. But in the medium term, what can we do? Let me concentrate again on Africa, because now Doreen did so, and I think is a good example and a crucial case for all of us. Where in Africa, we have 25, 29 million young people that enter in society. Hello? They enter in society every day. Now, every year. Now, we have to provide them with inclusion in society, and very often this means with jobs. How can we provide jobs to them? One may think we can expand further the production of raw material non-renewable, which means mines and energy, which is a partial answer because these are not sectors that provide a much stable long-term employment, and in particular, few employment. Then you may think the global value chain can help a lot. And in fact, when you are specialized just in a piece, you don't have to have a big roof like in the case of Henry Ford when he produced his car. You can work in a garage, and even if you are in Lomé, you can produce far. But unfortunately, in 93, 95, the percentage of intermediary goods produced by Africa on the total were 1.4%. And today, 2.2%. So the dissemination of global value chain is limited. Third, we may think that we can create free zones and replicate models, as Justin Ling is saying, or the previous chief economist of the African Development Bank, replicate example like the one followed by China in the past. It's not so easy to find out a good free zones, and it's not so easy to have a free zones that multiply the impact. But a free zone has an advantage. African entrepreneurs are very strong workers. If you walk in a periphery of a big city or a small city in Africa, you will see they are busy all the time and they try to figure out all the way to solve problems. They work much more than an official of a multilateral organization. There is no doubt every day. So what is lacking there? What is lacking is that if in Paris I do 500 meters, I found a good accountant. I can find a center for control of quality of my product that is close. I can have information about fashion trends. I can have information about new technology, among others, telecommunication, and so on. So what I am lacking is not a generic bullshit about the environment conducive to growth that mainly means national laws for attracting big multinational. No, what they lack is the local environment that can support them, because as they are small firms, they cannot do everything inside, so they buy from outside. And if the outside is good, they will be competitive. If the outside is bad, they will not. As a consequence, I think what we need is to provide a lot of services to these small firms, real services, and do something similar to what the New Deal did in the United States after the big crisis. There were extension services with technicians explaining to the farmers how to do accounting, how to use the right seeds, and so on. That's exactly what we need now with small firms, which means policies and which means knowledge. And I think, again, the country like Israel have a lot to tell us for exactly the development of technological small firms that have been incredible. There are other places in the world that can tell us similar lessons. Not every country, and supposedly not necessarily the most developed. So I do think small firms are crucial. Now, why in this discussion? I remember in '91, I was working in Jamaica for the textile sector. Entrepreneurs meant women. In many developing countries, the entrepreneurs are women, because women, unfortunately, because of slavery tradition, they are those that run the family. And so they are those that can manage. And in this respect, I think women entrepreneurs are particularly important in North Africa, in Africa. In Asia is evident. You can go there and you will see with your eyes. A little bit less in Latin America, where some efforts needs to be done.
Okay. So, Sarah, I'll just say on behalf of yourself and myself and everybody, I'll say thank you to Mario. I think, Mario, your words were, you wrapped everything up, and we really don't need to say anything more. You gave us all
because you
a lot to
organized
think
two good
about.
meetings. Because you organized two good meetings. You don't need to.
And I'll ask Gil to wrap up the session.
Mario, for your closing remarks, which were to an extent a wrap up of some of the important ideas that were raised. I will not summarize these two very significant and highly interesting days of 4 panel with amazing panelists, senior panelists from different corners of the globe, from different walks of life. So I will not summarize because the summary is very broad, and I can see that the numbers of our participants are deteriorating. I just want to say that in the international development community, which as the head of MASHAV I'm a member of, there are the constant dilemmas of the correct way to deal with development issues, the correct way to deal with development partnerships, if it is between countries, if it is between donors or between beneficiaries, if it is between international organizations, specialized agencies, and the mix and interaction between countries and international agencies. But one thing is very evident, that this very, very unique era of living under the COVID-19 pandemic has very much crystallized and brought forward all these dilemmas, because we need to solve these dilemmas quickly and swiftly, because it's very, very clear to all of us that real and concrete action will be needed at the immediate instant when the world will open up, because not all societies will be in a position to overcome what we're all experiencing, not all countries, not all governments, and we will definitely need to pull together, all of us, with all abilities that are out there, and to assist one another. And of course, to the most vulnerable, and as we said, all around these 2 days, women and girls are always in the front line of the most vulnerable. And from that point of view, I'm very happy that we conducted this conference under the leadership of the MCTC. And I want to thank the MASHAV Carmel Training Center, Chava Kari, Sarah, our co-hosts, and the entire staff of MCTC. And also want to thank the staff of MASHAV under the departments of training, Ambassador Irit Savion, and Department of Partnerships under Shuli Kozon Van Gelder, and all their staff. And I want to especially thank the thousands of participants that joined in one way or another parts of this seminar in these 2 days. From Israel, from the world, from many scores of countries, and we have to continue, and MASHAV will continue, and we hope to hold some more conferences tackling other points of view and issues affected by COVID-19, and mainly I hope that COVID-19 will be as short as possible, and we can return to our old normal, or to a renewed normal, and interact again with each other and solve the very burning issues of our planet. Thank you all very much. And since this is a conference dealing with women and girls, I think the last voice should be a feminine voice, so I'm returning the microphone back to Chava. Chava, really thank you very much for all the efforts, much appreciated.
Thank you, Gil. We actually wanted Mario to close, to hear a man's opinion of the women's world. Mario, would you like to say the last sentence?
Toda rabba and shalom.
Thank you very much to everyone. Really appreciated your insights, and I think it gives us a lot to think about. Thank you to all the staff, MASHAV, of course, the wonderful people here at MCTC, Aigud, and Gil. And we hope to meet again. Let's think how we're going to continue. We'll speak to all our panelists and see what's the way forward. So thank you very much to everyone for taking time. Toda rabba.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.